finding it hard to break into watercolour painting, or perhaps you aren't sure where to start with this wonderful medium? If that is the case, then I have a watercolour exercise that will help you free up how you think about watercolour and how you approach it. So I'm going to show you 3 different ways to make the same abstract watercolour flower design, and this is a great creative exercise to help you work out how to use watercolour and how to manipulate it to get the looks that you want. But before we get started, if you're new to my channel and want more art and mixed media tutorials, tips and inspiration, then please do subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss either of my Wednesday or Sunday art video. Now today I'm trying out some new paper, so I'm working on a studio watercolour paper for these experiments, as I'm not making a finished project, so I don't want to use my more expensive watercolour papers for just playing with, not at this point anyway. The paints I'm using are in the pan format, but you can also try this out with your liquid watercolours, which are very popular at the moment, and tube watercolours, or whatever format you've got. And I'm using mostly Prima Marketing watercolour today, and I tend to take out my favourite colours and put them into their own palette. But I'll have everything listed in the description below the video, so if you're looking for something, just have a look there. I'm also using a mop brush, which is one of my favourite styles of brushes for watercolour, but use whatever you're comfortable with. Oh, and you don't want to use a heat tool for this, so no speeding up of the drying. You want everything to dry naturally, that way you'll get the best textures. So painting with watercolour is really about learning how to control water and teaching yourself how much to add and when to get the effects and the looks that you want. So for the first abstract flower design, I'm going to use a small amount of water and let each layer dry before adding a different colour. In most cases on this piece, my brush is moist, but I haven't fully loaded it with water, so it isn't sopping wet when I pick up the pigment. And you can get some really lovely dry brush effects when you do this, which is when you get those broken edges, and sometimes you'll also get that lovely texture from the brush hairs. Once an area is dry, I will then add colour in the same way, but let the colours overlap, and I'm keeping the wet paints apart again. And I just keep working like that until the design is finished. Now for piece number 2, I'm going to use a much wetter brush to pick up the colour, and this time I won't let the flower shapes dry, but place different colours on top or next to each other so that they can be allowed to run into each other and mix together a little bit more. And also maybe we'll get some blooms as well, which is that kind of broken cauliflower texture at that wet edge. You'll definitely see what I mean at the end. For this piece, I've had to work a bit faster than the first piece. I've tried to move along the painting so that the paint on the surface is still wet when I add a new colour in. But in some places I might have missed that moment and the thin paint layer has dried, so when I've added the new paint, it just layers over the top, which is fine as well. Okay, so let's move on to piece number 3. And we're going to go all out and add water to the surface first. So I'm just roughly painting my abstract flower design on the paper with water. Then I'm going to drop the paint into the water and we'll see what happens. This is just such a fun technique to watch. So watching drying paint can be fun after all. How much water you put down first will directly influence how much movement you get of the paint, and it takes a bit of experimenting and just playing to get a feel for it and to decide what works for you and what effects you want to get. And I've used a lot of water here so that you can really see the results, but this will encourage the paint to pool in some areas, particularly as the paper buckles. There's a few things that you can do here. So if your paper does buckle a lot, then you could tape it down first. And if I was going to be doing a wash over a bigger area, I definitely would tape it down first. But for something like this, where I'm just playing and doing it quickly and loosely, I haven't bothered to tape it down because I'm not really that fussed about it. And another thing you can do is stretch your paper first as well. But I'm not going to go into that here. If you want to know more, then give me a shout. So to get your head around how much water you need when you want to wet your paper first, have a go with different amounts of water. So do another piece with less water, and then one where the surface only just glistens with the water. you'll soon learn how much water you need to put down first for the paper that you're using to get the look that you want to create. And again, in each case, let the paint just dry naturally. Don't use a heat tool. You'll just get a different look if you use a heat tool. Okay, so that was fun. Shall we have a look at the results? In the first piece, where we let the layers dry and used a small amount of water, you can see the effect from the layering new colours over the dry paint. And also some of that lovely dry brush texture as well, even though I didn't use a lot of it, but you can still see some here and there. For my second piece, I let all the paint run into each other by working new colours over or next to wet areas, but I still started with a dry surface just as I did in that first piece. And I was working a little faster in this piece, and with a little bit more water as well. Then for that third piece, I added water to the surface first and dropped the paint into it, so that it could move and mix together as it flowed through that wet layer. And you can see how the texture and the shapes change between these three techniques. It's the same design in all three, but they look very different, don't they? So I definitely encourage you to have play with this exercise and, just free it up a little bit. Don't worry about your watercolours too much. Just have a go, experiment, and get a feel for them. Now, if you have any questions, do let me know in the comments. Plus, also let me know what types of watercolours you are using at the moment. Are they pans like the ones I've used here? Or perhaps you're using tubes or some of the liquid watercolours, particularly the new ones that are coming out. And then there's like pencils you could be working with or pens. Let me know, I'd love to hear. I'm planning to do some more watercolour videos, so let me know also if there's anything you'd like me to cover. But I do already have some other watercolour videos on my channel, so feel free to catch up with those too, and here's a playlist. I really enjoyed sharing this exercise with you today. Please like the video and feel free to share it if you enjoyed it and found it useful. So I'll catch up again with you on Sunday. Have a creative few days. Thanks for watching. Bye.